The unexpected encounter. Mu-Jay had never been this lost before. His spaceship had crashed on an unknown planet, far away from any human settlement. The air was thick with strange purple mist, and the ground beneath him felt soft, like walking on a thick carpet of moss. His breathing was heavy. His oxygen levels were running low. If he didn't find shelter soon, he wouldn't last much longer. The planet was quiet, too quiet. No wind, no rustling of leaves, no sounds of animals. It made Mu-Jay feel uneasy. He tightened his grip on the small scanner attached to his wrist. The device beeped weakly, showing signs of life nearby. Maybe a cave or some kind of safe spot. He followed the signal, pushing through the tall blue grass that swayed without any wind. After walking for several minutes, Mu-Jay found himself in front of a large rock formation. A small opening led inside. A cave. He hesitated. Entering unknown places was risky, but he had no choice. His oxygen meter blinked red. He had to move fast. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. The cave was darker than he expected, but a strange golden glow flickered from deeper inside. He moved carefully, placing each step with caution. The air inside was warmer, almost comforting. As he walked further, he saw something that made his heart stop. There, standing in the middle of a glowing pool of water, was a woman, but she was not human. Her skin was a soft shade of violet, smooth and shimmering under the cave's golden light. Her silver-white hair flowed down her back, almost reaching her waist. She had long, pointed ears and eyes that glowed like molten gold. And most shocking of all, she wore nothing. Mu-Jay froze. He had seen many strange things in space, but nothing like this. The alien woman turned to face him, her golden eyes wide with shock. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then she screamed. The sound was sharp and filled the entire cave, making the walls tremble. Mu-Jay took a step back, raising his hands in surrender. "Wait, I didn't mean to." Before he could finish, the ground beneath him started shaking. The golden water in the pool rippled, and suddenly, strange symbols glowed on the cave walls. Mu-Jay's heart pounded. What had he just walked into? The alien woman shouted something in a language he didn't understand. She raised her hands, and a bright energy swirled around her fingers. Mu-Jay didn't need a translator to know that she was angry. "I swear, I don't mean any harm." Mu-Jay tried again, taking a slow step backward. His foot slipped, and he almost fell. The woman narrowed her eyes, her glowing hands still raised. Then, as if realizing something, her expression changed. She looked confused, almost worried. She said something in a softer voice, but Mu-Jay still didn't understand. Just when he thought things couldn't get any worse, the cave entrance suddenly filled with tall, armored figures. Mu-Jay turned his head slowly. His stomach dropped. The newcomers were alien warriors. Their armor was dark gold, with intricate markings on the chest plates. Each one carried a long, glowing spear. Their faces were hidden behind masks, but their body language made it clear. They were not happy to see him. One of the warriors stepped forward and spoke in a commanding tone. Mu-Jay had no idea what he was saying, but he could guess. "Who are you, and why are you here?" The alien woman pointed at Mu-Jay, speaking quickly. The warriors immediately surrounded him. Mu-Jay raised his hands higher. Hey, I don't want trouble. I was just looking for shelter." One of the warriors grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back. Mu-Jay gritted his teeth as pain shot up his shoulder. They were strong, too strong. The alien woman walked closer, looking at him with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. She said something to the warriors, and they hesitated. Then her golden eyes locked onto Mu-Jay's, and she spoke one word in perfect English. "Human." Mu-Jay's eyes widened. She knew his species. Before he could say anything, the warriors pulled him forward, forcing him to walk. His heart pounded as he realized what was happening. He was being taken prisoner. As they led him deeper into the cave, One thought raced through Mujay's mind. What had he just stumbled into? A royal mistake. Mujay's feet dragged against the smooth stone floor as the alien warriors pulled him forward. Their grips were strong, too strong for him to break free. His mind raced, trying to process everything. He had crash-landed, found shelter in a cave, only to stumble upon an unclothed alien woman who now looked at him as if he had committed a terrible crime. And now, he was being taken prisoner. The golden glow of the cave dimmed as they moved through a winding tunnel, its walls etched with glowing symbols. Mujay didn't know what they meant, but something told him they were ancient and important. The warriors moved with precision, their spears still pointed at him, ready to strike if he made any sudden movements. "Listen, I don't know what's going on." Mujay tried again, struggling against their hold. "I was just looking for a place-toe." A sharp jab in his back cut him off. One of the warriors grunted something in their language, but the message was clear. "Shut up." Mujay clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay calm. He had to think. The woman, no, the alien princess, if his instincts were right, walked ahead of them. Her silver-white hair shimmered under the cave's light, and though she was now wrapped in a flowing, golden robe given to her by one of the warriors, she still held herself with an undeniable air of authority. As they walked, she glanced back at him, her glowing golden eyes filled with something he couldn't quite understand. Was it curiosity, anger, or something else? Mujay had no answers, and that made him even more uneasy. The floating city. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the tunnel's exit. Mujay's breath caught in his throat as he stepped out into a world beyond imagination. A massive city stretched before him, floating above a glowing sea of mist. Towering spires of golden crystal pierced the sky, connected by shimmering bridges that pulsed with energy. Strange, hovering platforms carried people across different levels of the city, and at the very center stood a colossal structure, a palace unlike anything he had ever seen. The architecture was ancient yet futuristic, as if the city had existed for thousands of years, untouched by time. The air thrummed with power, and everywhere he looked, aliens of different shapes and sizes moved with grace and purpose. Mujay barely had time to take it all in before he was shoved forward. The warriors led him down a curved pathway made of smooth white stone, towards the palace at the city's heart. Great. I crash my ship, stumble into an alien ritual, and now I'm walking straight into an execution. The Judgment Hall. Mujay soon found himself standing in a massive chamber, surrounded by towering alien figures seated on golden thrones. The ceiling arched high above, filled with floating orbs of light that pulsed gently, casting a warm glow over the hall. The warriors forced him to kneel on a circular platform. Mujay grit his teeth but said nothing. He had no choice but to play along for now. At the far end of the chamber, seated on a raised platform, were the elders. They were different from the warriors. Taller, robed, and surrounded by a faint golden aura. Their eyes, deep and wise, seemed to peer into his very soul. One of them, an elder with a crown-like structure on his head, spoke in a deep, commanding voice. The alien language rolled off his tongue in a way Mujay couldn't understand, but there was no mistaking the power in his tone. Mujay turned his gaze to the princess. She stood to the side, her expression unreadable. She spoke back to the elders, her voice calm yet firm. It was clear that she held some authority here, but he could also tell that she was being questioned. Finally, the elder with the crown turned his gaze to Mujay. He narrowed his glowing eyes, and then, to Mujay's shock, spoke in flawless English. "Human, you have defiled a sacred ritual." Mujay's heart pounded. He wanted to argue, wanted to scream that it was all a misunderstanding, but he held his tongue. He needed to hear what they had to say first. The elder continued, his voice unwavering. "The ritual of the ascension is a sacred rite. The princess was to undergo her transformation, proving her divine right to rule. But you, an outsider, have interfered. You have tainted the ritual. Mujay frowned. Tainted? What did they mean by that? He had barely stepped into the cave when she screamed. How could he have ruined anything? Wait, hold on. Mujay finally spoke, glancing at the princess. I didn't even touch her. I just walked in, and she screamed like I. Silence. The elder's voice boomed across the chamber, and Mujay felt a force pressing against his chest, as if gravity itself had increased. He gasped but held his ground. These guys were powerful. The elder exchanged a glance with the princess before turning back to him. The punishment for such a crime is death. The words hit Mujay like a punch to the gut. He barely had time to process them before the warriors grabbed him again, pulling him to his feet. Wait, hold on. This is a mistake. I didn't even. But they weren't listening. Mujay struggled, but it was no use. The warriors were dragging him toward a massive stone doorway, leading to something dark and ominous. His panic grew. This is it. This is how I die. But then, just as Mujay thought it was over, a voice rang through the hall. Stop. The princess. Everyone froze. The warriors stopped moving. The elders turned to her, and even Mujay, struggling against his captors, held his breath. She stepped forward, lifting her chin high, her golden eyes flashing with something fierce. I will not allow this, she said, her voice steady. The crowned elder raised a brow. You defend the human. The princess nodded. He did not know of our traditions. He did not intend to disrupt the ritual. She paused, then added, give him a trial. A murmur spread through the chamber. The elders exchanged glances, their glowing eyes unreadable. Finally, after what felt like forever, the elder in the crown spoke. Very well, he said. The human shall be given a trial. Mujay almost sighed in relief, until he saw the cruel smirk on the elder's face. If he survives, he may go free. But if he fails, the elder's voice dropped, filled with quiet menace. Then he will die as the ritual demands. The doors at the end of the hall suddenly rumbled open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. A distant growl echoed from within, low and menacing. Mujay's relief disappeared instantly. He was about to face something much worse than execution, a trial of survival. Mujay's heart pounded as the massive stone doors groaned open, revealing a dark and cavernous chamber beyond. A wave of hot, humid air rushed out, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of something ancient and dangerous. The low, guttural growl from within sent a chill down his spine. The alien warriors shoved him forward, forcing him to step onto the smooth, circular platform that served as the entrance to what could only be described as a gladiator-style arena. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with jagged bioluminescent crystals that cast an eerie glow. Suspended high above, an audience of alien spectators filled the stands. Nobles, warriors, and elders, all watching in silence. A raised throne-like platform stood at the far end, where Princess Lorena and the elders sat, observing. Her golden eyes were unreadable, but something about the way she clenched her jaw told Mujay she wasn't entirely on board with this. Mujay swallowed hard as he was led to the center of the arena. This was it. This was the trial. A booming voice echoed across the chamber. The human has defiled our sacred ritual. He will prove his worth in the trial of beasts. If he survives, he is free. If he fails, he dies. The crowd erupted into cheers and chants, some banging their spears against the ground. Mujay felt his pulse quicken. Great, just great. First, I get falsely accused, and now I have to fight some alien monster. Without weapons. A deep metallic clang rang out, and the massive iron gates on the far side of the arena began to rise. Dust and sand swirled as something huge emerged from the shadows. Mujay's breath caught in his throat. The creature was unlike anything he had ever seen. A beast with the body of a panther, but covered in thick, obsidian-like armor plates. Its eyes glowed a menacing crimson, and sharp curved tusks jutted from its lower jaw. Its tail, long and whip-like, crackled with blue energy, sending sparks flying as it lashed against the stone floor. The crowd roared in excitement as the beast let out a thunderous roar, shaking the very ground beneath Mujay's feet. He had no weapons, no armor, and no idea how to fight something like this. I am so screwed. The battle begins. The beast lunged forward with terrifying speed, its massive claws ripping through the air. Mujay barely dodged, rolling to the side as the ground where he stood just seconds ago was obliterated by the creature's strike. Too fast, too strong. I can't fight this thing head-on. Mujay scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. He needed a plan. He wasn't a warrior. He was an engineer. He had no idea how to fight with his fists, but if he could just figure out how the beast moved, maybe he could outsmart it. The creature snarled and charged again. Mujay jumped back, narrowly avoiding its massive claws. Then he noticed something. The beast's armored plates only covered most of its body, but not its underbelly. A weakness. But how was he supposed to hit it without a weapon? The crowd continued to roar, waiting for the human's inevitable demise. Mujay glanced toward Larina. She sat stiffly in her throne, her hands gripping the armrests. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second, and then she moved. Mujay barely caught the motion of her hand, a small flicker of energy traveling through the air toward him. Something small and metallic landed just a few feet away. A weapon. Without hesitation, Mujay lunged forward and grabbed it. His fingers closed around the small metallic device, a cylindrical rod with a trigger mechanism on the side. A sudden hum filled the air as the weapon activated, its end crackling with a sharp blue energy field. A shock baton. Mujay barely had time to process it before the beast came charging again. The turning point. This time, Mujay didn't run. As the creature lunged, he ducked at the last second, sliding beneath its massive body. He slammed the baton into its unarmored underbelly, pressing the trigger. A violent shockwave surged through the beast's body, causing it to let out an ear-splitting roar of agony. It stumbled, its limbs convulsing from the sudden burst of energy. The crowd gasped. The elders leaned forward, whispering among themselves. The human was actually fighting back. But the beast wasn't done yet. It whipped its tail toward Mujay, the electrified tip crackling. He barely dodged, feeling the heat of the energy singe his jacket. One more hit. I just need one more good hit. Mujay ran toward the beast, dodging another swipe. He leaped onto its back, using the baton to send another surge of energy directly into the base of its skull. The beast let out one final screech, its entire body shuddering, before collapsing onto the arena floor. A deafening silence fell over the chamber. Mujay slowly pushed himself to his feet, panting heavily. He could barely believe it. He had won. A new kind of trouble. The silence didn't last long. The crowd erupted into a mix of cheers and furious shouts. Some aliens clapped in awe, while others booed in outrage. The elders spoke among themselves, their expressions unreadable. Then one of them stood. "The human has proven his strength," the elder announced, his voice echoing across the chamber. "But strength alone does not make one worthy." Mujay stiffened. What now? The elder turned to Princess Larina, his glowing eyes narrowing. "This human has broken our sacred traditions. You defended him. What do you say now, Princess?" Larina stood, her posture tense. She looked at Mujay for a long moment before turning back to the elder. "He has survived your trial," she said firmly. "He is not our enemy." The elder's expression darkened. "Perhaps, but the human's presence still threatens our ways. This is not over." Mujay felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He had won the fight, but the real battle was only beginning. As he was led away, he stole one last glance at Larina. She had saved his life, but at what cost? And more importantly, why? The fight for freedom. New Jay's body ached with exhaustion, his breath ragged as two armored warriors dragged him through the towering hallways of the palace. The trial of beasts was over, but the tension in the air was thicker than ever. He had survived. Barely. Yet the way the alien nobles and warriors whispered and glared at him told New Jay that survival alone wasn't enough. Something was wrong. Princess Larina walked ahead, her silver-white hair flowing like silk, her posture tense but composed. She hadn't spoken a word to him since the trial ended, and Mujay could tell something was weighing on her mind. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached a massive golden chamber, a throne room, grand and imposing. The elders sat on throne-like seats, their glowing eyes fixed on him like predators watching wounded prey. New Jay's instincts screamed at him, "This isn't over." The crowned elder, the one who had sentenced him, leaned forward. "The human has survived," he announced, his deep voice reverberating across the hall. "But as I said before, strength alone does not make one worthy." Mujay stiffened. His gut twisted. Here it comes. The elder's gaze hardened. The sacred ritual was still disrupted. The ascension did not complete. The human's presence remains an abomination to our traditions. A low murmur spread through the hall. Some nobles nodded in agreement. Others glanced at each other, uncertain. New Jay clenched his fists. "So what? I survived your damn trial. Doesn't that prove I didn't mean any harm?" The elder barely blinked. "Your survival means nothing." The princess's transformation was interrupted. The gods may never bless her again. His eyes darkened. "For that, you must still pay the price." Mujay gritted his teeth. "Let me guess. Death." The elder's lips curled slightly, almost in amusement. "No." The warriors tightened their grip on Mujay's arms. "We have something far more fitting." A dark sentence. Mujay was shoved onto his knees as the chamber fell silent. The crowned elder rose from his throne, raising his hand. From the side, another elder, a tall, hooded figure, stepped forward, holding a golden, glowing staff. A humming energy pulsed from its tip, swirling like a storm trapped within glass. Mujay's chest tightened. "What the hell is that?" The elder's voice was cold and final. "You will be branded, human. A mark of dishonor for your crime." Mujay's pulse spiked. "Branded? What does that mean?" Lyrena took a sharp breath, her fists clenching. "You will bear our mark," the elder continued. "A living curse, a sign to all that you are an outsider who defile our ways." His eyes gleamed. "No alien shall welcome you. No civilization shall offer you shelter. You will forever be hunted, a fugitive across the stars." Mujay's stomach dropped. They weren't just sentencing him. They were ruining his entire future. The elder turned to the warriors. "Begin." The hooded figure stepped forward, the glowing staff humming louder. The air grew heavy, static crackling against Mujay's skin. The warriors held him down as the staff descended toward his forehead. Panic exploded in Mujay's chest. "No, no, I won't let them do this." He thrashed against his captors, but their grip was unbreakable. The staff touched his skin. A blinding shockwave burst through the chamber. Mujay's vision flashed white. A sharp, searing pain ripped through his skull, like fire burning through his very soul. He screamed, his body convulsing. Energy pulsed into him, spreading through his veins, carving something deep into his being. Then, darkness. The escape plan. Mujay gasped awake, his entire body trembling. He was lying in a dimly lit chamber, stone walls surrounding him. His head throbbed, his skin burned, and when he looked down at his forearm, his stomach twisted. There it was, the mark. A glowing sigil carved into his flesh, pulsing with golden light. The curse. His breath came in ragged bursts. "No, no, this isn't happening." A soft voice broke through his haze. "You're awake." Mujay turned. Lyrena was sitting beside him, her expression unreadable. He pushed himself up, his muscles screaming in protest. What the hell did they do to me? She hesitated. The elders have marked you. It's a living curse. It makes you an exile. Any alien civilization that recognizes it will either shun you, she met his gaze, or kill you. New Jay's blood ran cold. Lyrena took a deep breath. We have to leave. New Jay blinked. Wait. What? She stood, urgency in her golden eyes. The elders won't stop with just the curse. They still see you as a threat. If we don't escape tonight, they'll find another excuse to have you executed. New Jay stared at her. You keep saying we. Why are you helping me? Lyrena looked away for a moment before whispering. Because I don't trust them anymore. The confession hung in the air, heavy with meaning. New Jay swallowed. He hadn't expected that. He had assumed she was just another spoiled princess, another noble who followed tradition blindly. But now, she was risking everything to help him. Before he could process it, she reached into her robe and pulled out a small glowing crystal. This is an energy key, she said. It unlocks the emergency exit tunnels beneath the palace. We use them in case of an invasion. New Jay nodded slowly. And where do these tunnels lead? Her lips curved into a determined smirk. To a stolen spaceship I hid before the trial. New Jay blinked, then laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. A princess with an escape plan. Now I've seen everything. Lyrena crossed her arms. Are you coming or not? New Jay didn't even hesitate. Oh, hell yes. She turned toward the door. Then let's move. We don't have much time. New Jay glanced down at his glowing curse mark. Hunted across the stars. An exile. Forever an outsider. He exhaled sharply. No, if I have anything to say about it, this story isn't over yet. With that, he followed Princess Lyrena into the dark. The real adventure was just beginning. The escape plan. New Jay moved swiftly behind Lyrena, his senses still reeling from everything that had happened. His head throbbed, the curse mark on his forearm burning like a fresh wound. But there was no time to dwell on it. If they didn't move now, there would be no escape at all. The palace corridors were eerily silent. Golden torches flickered against the marble walls, casting elongated shadows that danced like ghosts. New Jay's breathing was steady, but his pulse was erratic. He had never been hunted before. Lyrena led him through a series of winding hallways, her every step precise, calculated. She moved like someone who had planned this escape long before tonight. New Jay couldn't help but whisper, "You've done this before, haven't you?" She shot him a quick glance but didn't answer. Yeah, he thought so. The two of them descended a spiral staircase, the air growing colder the deeper they went. At the bottom, they reached a large metal door, covered in intricate glowing symbols. Lyrena pulled out the energy key she had shown him earlier. The crystal pulsated as she pressed it against the door's center. A low hum filled the chamber, and then, click. The door slid open, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. A gust of stale, underground air washed over them. New Jay swallowed hard. Where does this lead? He asked. Lyrena stepped inside first. Beneath the city, to the old launch stations. No one uses them anymore, except smugglers and thieves. New Jay smirked. So, we're stealing a ship. Lyrena didn't answer. She just kept walking. The chase begins. They hadn't made it more than 50 steps into the tunnel when an alarm blared overhead, its deep war horn-like sound vibrating through the stone walls. New Jay cursed under his breath. They know we're gone. Lyrena spun around, her golden eyes flashing. We have to move faster. She took off into a sprint. New Jay didn't hesitate. They raced through the tunnels, their footsteps echoing. Behind them, the sound of distant voices and clanking armor filled the air. The Princess has escaped. Find them. Do not let them reach the surface. New Jay's chest tightened. They sound motivated. Lyrina's face was tense. They won't let me leave. Ever. For the first time, Mujay realized the full weight of her betrayal. This wasn't just about him anymore. Lyrina was turning her back on her own people, risking everything to escape with him. And they were pissed about it. The bridge of no return. The tunnel opened into a vast underground cavern. In the center, suspended over a dark abyss, was a rusted metal bridge, leading to a docking station on the other side. And there it was, a sleek black spacecraft, docked and waiting. Its engines glowed dimly, still in standby mode. Mujay's heart leaped. Their way out. But between them and the ship, a dozen heavily armed alien warriors. Mujay skidded to a stop. Well, that's a problem. Lyrina's jaw clenched. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small handheld blaster, its barrel humming softly with energy. Mujay blinked. You've been carrying that this whole time. She smirked. I'm a princess. I'm always armed. Before Mujay could comment, the warriors turned toward them, their glowing weapons drawn. A deep, commanding voice boomed across the cavern. Lyrina of the Royal House, surrender now. From the shadows stepped a towering figure, a warlord clad in crimson battle armor, his face obscured by a horned helmet. His golden spear crackled with raw energy. Lyrina stiffened beside Mujay. Her voice was cold as ice. Hello, Varric. Mujay frowned. Who's this guy? She didn't take her eyes off the warlord. The royal executioner. Mujay's stomach dropped. You're kidding. Varric lifted his spear, its energy tip glowing brighter. The elders have decreed your fate, princess. His voice was calm, patient, like he already knew how this would end. Come with me, and your punishment will be merciful. Lyrina's fingers tightened around her blaster. And if I refuse? Varric's head tilted slightly. Then, without warning, he hurled his spear. The weapon shot forward like lightning, aimed directly at Mujay's chest. Mujay dove aside, the spear barely missing him before it implanted itself into the metal bridge, sending a wave of blue energy crackling across the floor. The warriors charged. Lyrina fired first, taking down two of them with precise shots. Mujay, still unarmed, grabbed a fallen warrior's weapon, a sleek plasma rifle that fit perfectly in his hands. Time to fight. The last stand at the docking station. Mujay ducked behind a support beam, firing bursts of plasma at the advancing warriors. Lyrina moved like a shadow, her shots quick and deadly. But Varric wasn't just any warrior. With inhuman speed, he closed the distance, knocking Mujay's weapon aside and swinging his energy spear. Mujay barely dodged, rolling across the bridge's unstable metal surface. You are unworthy, Varric sneered. You do not belong here. Mujay gritted his teeth. Yeah, tell me something I don't know. Varric lunged again. Mujay dodged, barely. His muscles burned with exhaustion, and the curse mark on his arm flared with pain. He was outmatched. And then, boom! A sudden explosion rocked the cavern. The bridge shuddered violently, cracks splitting across its surface. Mujay's stomach dropped as he saw the entire structure begin to collapse. Go! Lyrina shouted, running toward the ship. Mujay ran for his life, dodging falling debris as the bridge crumbled behind him. Varric gave chase, his movements eerily calm, even as the ground disappeared beneath his feet. Mujay leaped for the docking platform. His fingers gripped the edge just as the last of the bridge collapsed into the abyss. Varric lunged after him. But at the last second, a falling beam struck the executioner, sending him plummeting into the darkness below. Mujay pulled himself up, panting heavily. Lyrina grabbed his hand, yanking him toward the ship's ramp. We have to go, she yelled over the alarms. They rushed inside, Mujay stumbling into the pilot's seat. His hands flew over the controls, activating the ship's systems. The engines roared to life, the docking bay collapsing around them. And then, with a final burst of thrusters, the ship shot into the sky, leaving the burning city behind. The aftermath. The cockpit was silent except for the hum of the ship's engine. Mujay exhaled slowly, staring out at the endless stretch of stars. Lyrina sat beside him, gazing at the same view. For the first time, there was no hostility between them, just quiet understanding. Mujay flexed his fingers, looking at the cursed mark still glowing on his forearm. "So," he muttered, leaning back, "I guess we're fugitives now." Lyrina smiled slightly. "Looks like it." Mujay chuckled. "I've had worse days." She raised a brow. "Have you?" Mujay thought about it for a second, then laughed again. "No." The ship disappeared into the stars, leaving a kingdom in flames behind them. And Mujay knew this was only the beginning. Betrayal and truth. The starship cut through the endless void of space, its engines humming softly as it slipped past the gravity field of the alien world. Mujay sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring out at the deep blackness stretching before him. His mind was still racing, but his body was too exhausted to keep up. Every inch of him ached, from the brutal fight in the arena to the curse mark that still pulsed on his arm, a constant reminder that he would never be the same again. Beside him, Princess Lyrina was silent, her golden eyes fixed on the navigation screen. The tension between them wasn't hostile, but it wasn't comfortable either. They were alone together, but Mujay couldn't tell if they were allies or just two people running from the same enemy. Finally, he exhaled sharply. "Okay, we escaped. We survived. Now what?" Lyrina didn't look at him. "We need to find a safe place to land." Mujay scoffed. "Right, because exiled fugitives with a stolen ship have a lot of options." He gestured toward the curse mark still glowing faintly on his forearm. "In case you forgot, I'm officially hated by all aliens now." Lyrina's expression darkened, but she said nothing. Mujay sat forward. "So, are we gonna talk about that? What exactly is this thing they put on me? What does it really do?" Lyrina sighed and rubbed her temples, as if debating how much to tell them. Finally, she spoke. "It's more than just a mark. It's a tracking seal. It's not just a symbol of exile. It binds to your very life force. If someone knows how to read it, they can always find you." Mujay's stomach dropped. "Wait, so you're saying the elders can still track me?" Lyrina nodded slowly. Mujay cursed under his breath and clenched his fists. They were never going to let him go. "That's just fantastic," he muttered, rubbing his forehead. "So no matter where we go, no matter what we do, they'll find us." Lyrina hesitated. "Not exactly. The mark can be removed, but only by someone who understands the ancient magic behind it." Mujay stared at her. "Let me guess. The only people who know how to remove it are the sane ones who want me dead." She met his gaze. "Not exactly. There's someone else." Mujay leaned forward, suddenly intrigued. "Who?" Lyrina hesitated again, but then her voice dropped to a near whisper. "My mother." Mujay blinked. "Wait, the Queen?" Lyrina nodded. "Before she died, she had knowledge of the old ways, secrets even the elders tried to suppress. There were rumors that she could remove curse seals like this. If she was alive, she could have helped you." Mujay frowned. "But she's not alive." Lyrina's expression turned unreadable. "That's what the elders say." Mujay's stomach tightened. He was starting to understand. "You think she's still out there?" Lyrina took a slow breath. "I don't know for sure, but there's a place. The lost temple of Solveris. It was where my mother studied before she became queen. If there's any trace of her knowledge left in this galaxy, it will be there." Mujay leaned back, exhaling slowly. "So, let me get this straight. We just broke out of the most powerful empire in this part of space. Now you want us to fly into some mystical death temple, looking for a queen who may or may not be alive." Lyrena smirked slightly. You have a better plan. Mujay laughed dryly. Oh, absolutely not. I love the suicidal plans. Keep 'em coming. The sudden betrayal. Before Lyrena could respond, the ship's alarms blared. A warning scream lit up the dashboard, displaying an incoming transmission. Mujay frowned. We're getting a comm signal. Lyrena's brow furrowed. That's impossible. We should be invisible to long-range scanners. The screen flickered. A hologram projection appeared, displaying a masked figure cloaked in darkness. A voice, smooth, calculating, and eerily familiar, spoke. Princess, I knew you wouldn't leave without a plan. You never disappoint. Lyrena's face paled. No. Mujay looked between her and the figure. Okay, clearly, you know this guy. Who is he? Lyrena's fingers tightened into fists. Her voice was ice. Prince Kaler, my brother. Mujay felt his stomach drop. Wait, you have a brother. And you didn't think to mention that while we were running for our lives. Lyrena barely glanced at him. Her gaze was locked on the hologram. What do you want, Kaler? She said coldly. The prince chuckled. Come now, sister. You know exactly what I want. His glowing red eyes turned toward Mujay, and his voice grew colder. I want the human. Mujay tensed. Great. Another royal that wants me dead. Kaler smirked. Oh, I don't want to kill you, Mujay. Not yet. At least, you're far more valuable alive. Mujay narrowed his eyes. Not sure I like where this is going. Kaler turned back to Lyrena. You made a mistake, dear sister. The elders might have sentenced him to exile. But I see opportunity. The human is special. Mujay rolled his eyes. Yeah, real special. A wanted fugitive with a curse mark and a stolen spaceship. Kaler's smirk didn't fade. Oh no, human. You don't understand. You see that curse on your arm. It's not just a punishment. It's a key. Lyrena's expression sharpened. A key to what? Kaler's eyes gleamed. To something far more powerful than you could ever imagine. Mujay felt his blood run cold. Before he could react, the ship suddenly rocked violently. The alarms blared louder. Lyrena cursed. They've locked onto us. They're pulling us in. Mujay's hands flew to the controls, but it was no use. A tractor beam had them fully ensnared, dragging them toward a massive battleship that had just decloaked in front of them. Kaler's voice was smooth, almost amused. You always were too reckless, sister. Don't worry. I'll take good care of our guest. The transmission cut. Mujay turned to Lyrena. Tell me you have a plan. She gritted her teeth. I have a plan. Mujay exhaled. Good. She glanced at him. It's not a very good one. Mujay groaned, slamming his head back against the chair. You really are trying to kill me. As the ship was dragged closer to the waiting battleship, Mujay realized something. Escape was just the beginning. Now, the real fight was about to begin. The great escape and a new beginning. The tractor beam hummed with an eerie blue light as Mujay's stolen ship was pulled into the massive battleship's hangar bay. The docking clamps locked in place with a metallic thud, sealing their fate. Red emergency lights flashed across the bay, illuminating the dozens of heavily armed warriors already surrounding the ship, their weapons primed and ready. Mujay sat back in his chair, exhaling sharply. So, just to be clear, our plan is to not die, right? Lyrena gripped her blaster tightly, her golden eyes scanning the screen. That would be ideal, yes. Mujay smirked. Good, just making sure. They had seconds before the enemy forces stormed in. Mujay quickly scanned the cockpit for anything useful. Weapons? No. Shields. Offline. The ship itself, completely locked down. He let out a slow breath. So, Princess, I assume you have some last-minute miracle hidden up your sleeve. Lyrena didn't answer right away. Her fingers danced over the controls, activating a secret command within the ship's system. A small holographic countdown appeared on the screen. Detonation sequence activated. New Jay's eyes widened. Oh hell no. Tell me you did not just activate a self-destruct. Lyrena gave him a look. Would you rather be captured? Honestly, the explosion doesn't sound much better. Lyrena stood, holstering her blaster. Then we need to get off this ship before it goes up in flames. New Jay groaned. You're gonna be the death of me, aren't you? Lyrena smirked. Not today. The betrayal of Prince Kaler. The moment the ship's hatch hissed open, New Jay and Lyrena were met with a wall of soldiers, each one clad in gleaming black armor, their glowing visors scanning them with precision. At the front of the pack stood Prince Kaler, arms folded, a smug expression on his face. Ah, sister, human. He gave a mock bow. Welcome aboard. New Jay rolled his eyes. You know, for a guy who just kidnapped us, you're surprisingly polite. Kaler chuckled. Oh, I'm not kidnapping you, human. His eyes gleamed. I'm saving you. Lyrena tensed beside New Jay. From what? Kaler's smirk grew. From yourself, of course. He took a slow step forward, hands clasped behind his back. You're both being hunted, exiled, cast away as fugitives. But me, he placed a hand over his chest. I have power. I have the throne's favor. And I'm offering you a way out. New Jay raised an eyebrow. A way out? That usually involves not being executed. Kaler grinned. Exactly. He turned to Lyrena. Come back, sister. I will erase your crimes. The elders will forgive your disobedience. And the human, I can remove his curse. New Jay's pulse spiked. His curse mark burned slightly, as if reminding him of its presence. Lyrena's eyes narrowed. What's the catch? Kaler let out a small laugh. Oh, Lyrena, you always see the worst in me. His face darkened. But you're right. There is a catch. He turned to New Jay. I don't need both of you. New Jay's stomach dropped. Kaler smiled. Join me, and the human dies. A fight for survival. Silence stretched between them for a long moment. New Jay watched Lyrena carefully, waiting for her reaction. Then, without a word, Lyrena pulled her blaster and fired. The shot barely missed Kaler's head, but it was enough to send the entire room into chaos. New Jay dove behind a stack of crates, narrowly avoiding the storm of laser fire that erupted. He grabbed a fallen soldier's rifle, quickly switching to a more stable firing position. Yeah, he muttered. Guess that means we're not taking his deal. Lyrena vaulted over cover, moving like a shadow, taking out 2 soldiers with precise shots. She rolled into a crouch beside New Jay. What now? He asked between bursts of plasma fire. Lyrena smirked. We improvise. New Jay groaned. Great. That always goes well. Kaler sighed loudly, standing safely behind a shield barrier. Sister, you've made this unnecessarily complicated. He lifted a hand. End them. The elite guards surged forward, their armor glowing with enhanced shielding. New Jay's shots bounced off harmlessly, barely leaving a dent. He cursed. Yeah, bullets aren't working. Lyrena quickly assessed the situation. We need to get to the control panel. If we disable the shields, we have a chance. New Jay glanced toward the security hub across the hangar. It was far and completely exposed. Yeah, sure, he muttered. Let me just run across a death field real quick. Lyrena glanced at him. I'll cover you. New Jay inhaled. This was insane. But then again, so was everything else today. He bolted from cover, sprinting toward the control panel as lasers whizzed past him. Disabling the shields, New Jay skidded into the security hub, his hands flying over the control pad. Wires, screens, interfaces. This was his territory. He quickly hacked into the system, overriding the defensive grid. The enemy shields flickered, then collapsed entirely. Lyrena took full advantage. Now that their armor was vulnerable, She tore through the soldiers with precision shots, felling them one by one. Kaler's eyes widened as he realized what had happened. You. Before he could finish, Mu-Jay activated the ship's detonation sequence. A loud siren blared across the battleship. Warning. Critical core AFA-LUR. EVAQA MMEDA-EOI. Kaler snarled. You fool. You'll kill us all. Mu-Jay smirked. Wouldn't be my first time. Final confrontation. With the ship in chaos, Mu-Jay and Lorena fought their way back to the hangar bay. Kaler blocked their exit, his energy sword glowing with power. I won't let you leave, he hissed. Lorena lifted her blaster. Then you're going down with this ship. Kaler lunged forward, but at the last second. Mu-Jay hurled a stun grenade at his feet. Boom! A flash of white-hot energy engulfed Kaler, sending him crashing into the metal floor, unconscious. Mu-Jay wiped the sweat from his forehead. Yeah, I'm not sword fighting today. Lorena smirked. Smart move. They'd raced aboard their ship, sealing the hatch just as the battleship began imploding. With one final burst of thrusters, their ship launched into the stars, escaping just as the entire battleship erupted into a fiery explosion behind them. A new beginning. Mu-Jay slumped into the pilot's seat, breathing heavily. Lorena sat beside him, exhaling slowly. Well, he said, that was something. Lorena chuckled. You survived. Mu-Jay looked at his glowing curse mark. Yeah. But this isn't over. Lorena's golden eyes softened. No, but we'll fix it. Mu-Jay smirked. Guess that means we have a new mission. The ship disappeared into hyperspace, leaving the wreckage of Kaler's fleet far behind. Their adventure was just beginning.